All right, today we are diving into one of the most powerful and honestly game-changing essays in all of modern literature. We're talking about T.S. Eliot's Tradition and the Individual Talent from way back in 1919. And trust me, this is a piece that completely blew up how we think about poetry, art, and the artist.
So Eliot kicks things off with a huge challenge to everything we think we know. We love this idea of the lone genius, right? The tortured artist, just pouring their unique soul onto the page. But what if that whole picture is a myth? Let's get into it.
First on the chopping block is our obsession with pure, absolute originality. We have this built-in tendency to believe that for art to be truly great, it has to be completely new, like a total break from everything that ever came before it.
I mean, just think about it. When you talk about your favorite writers or musicians, what do you praise? Usually it's all the ways they don't sound like anyone else. We're always hunting for what Eliot called their peculiar essence, the stuff that feels totally them and totally different from their influences. But here is where Eliot throws the first big curveball. He argues that if we actually look closer, we'll find that the best, most unique parts of an artist's work are actually the moments where their ancestors, the great artists of the past, are speaking through them the loudest. It's not about ignoring history, it's about becoming a channel for it.
And that brings us to how he totally redefines the word tradition. We usually think of tradition in art as a bad thing. It sounds old, stuffy, like you're just blindly copying the past. But for Eliot, no way. Tradition is something completely different. It's not something you just inherit. It's something you have to work your butt off to obtain. It's not old and dusty. It's a living, breathing conversation with all of art history all at once.
The key to all this is what Eliot calls the historical sense. Now, this isn't just knowing your history homework. It's this deep, profound feeling that the entire history of literature, from Homer all the way to yesterday, exists right now, in this single, simultaneous moment. A great artist writes with that entire library living inside their bones. And this quote just nails it. It's a two-way street. A new masterpiece doesn't just get tacked on to the end of the timeline. It actually changes how we understand all the art that came before it. It shifts the entire constellation. The new rearranges the old, just as much as the old gives shape to the new. So, Eliot has just redefined originality. But believe me, he is just getting started. Next up, he takes on an even bigger, more romantic idea, the myth that great art is all about the artist's personality and their personal feelings.
We love this idea, don't we? The artist, bearing their soul, turning their personal pain into beautiful art. We read a poem and we immediately want to connect it to the poet's diary, to their heartbreaks, to their private life.
And then Eliot drops this bombshell. He just completely flips our entire assumption on its head. For him, the whole point of making art isn't about expressing yourself, it's about escaping yourself. It is a process of depersonalization where the artist has to get out of the way to let the art actually happen.
I mean, that is a huge claim. If the artist needs to escape their own personality, then what in the world is the creative process? How does a poem even get made? Well, to explain this, Eliot turns to this really cool analogy from chemistry. He asks us to stop thinking of the poet's mind as this fountain of feelings, and instead to think of it like a catalyst in a chemical reaction. It's an amazing metaphor, so let's break it down step by step. Okay, step one, you've got your ingredients. These are countless feelings, phrases, images, all just floating around. And here's the really wild part. Eliot says these don't even have to be the poet's own personal emotions. They can be emotions they've only read about or ones they've never even felt. Next, you introduce the catalyst. And what's the catalyst? The mind of the poet. Eliot compares it to a tiny shred of platinum. It's the thing that's going to make the magic happen, but it's not actually an ingredient that ends up in the final mix. So all those feelings and emotions get mixed together in the presence of the poet's mind. A fusion happens. But, and you have to get this part, the platinum catalyst itself isn't affected. The poet's mind makes the combination possible, but it stays separate, neutral, and totally unchanged by the process. And finally, the result. You've created a totally new thing, the poem. Eliot calls this a new art emotion. And just like the acid that's formed in the experiment has zero trace of the platinum that made it happen, the poem has zero trace of the poet's actual personality. It's its own thing, completely independent. So the crucial point is this. For Eliot, becoming a better artist isn't about feeling more deeply or having a more exciting life. It's about perfecting that separation.
the gap between the person who lives and suffers and the creative mind that acts as a medium for art to be born.
Now, you can imagine these ideas were absolutely earth-shattering in 1919. They sent massive shockwaves through the literary world. So let's talk about why this essay, a century later, still matters so much.
I mean, the impact was just immense. Eliot's theories didn't just influence literary criticism, they basically built the foundation for it for decades. They created a whole school of thought that focused intensely on the words on the page, not the author's life story. This essay became a manifesto for modernism and forced everybody to rethink what art is and how it even works.
So if you take just one thing away today, let it be this. Eliot's greatest achievement here was to pull our attention away from the poet and slam it right back onto the poetry. He taught generations of us how to focus on the work of art itself, its structure, its language, its place in history, instead of getting bogged down in the personal life of the person who made it.
And that, of course, leaves us with a question that feels more relevant today than ever, one we argue about constantly. More than 100 years after Eliot came up with his theory of impersonality, we are still wrestling with this exact idea. Can we, and maybe more importantly, should we, separate the art from the artist? Eliot gave us his answer. What's yours?